She thought the hardest part was leaving. She thought the fear ended when the plane wheels left the tarmac at JFK. But Emma was wrong. The real danger wasn't the monster she left behind in New York. It was the man she was currently drooling on in first class. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he had a faded scar running down his jawline or why his knuckles were bruised. All she knew was that she had taken the first flight out to escape a nightmare, only to wake up on the shoulder of the devil himself. And the terrifying part? He was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world worth burning down. This is the story of how running away led me straight into the fire. The rain at JFK International Airport wasn't just rain. It was a deluge, a relentless grey sheet that matched the chaos inside Emma's chest. She stood at the Delta check-in kiosk, her fingers trembling so violently she mistyped her last name twice. Don't look back. Just breathe. If you look back, you'll see him. She wasn't looking for Marcus. She was looking for his shadows. Marcus distinctively didn't do his own dirty work. He was the VP of mergers at Sterling Vance Capital, a man who wore three-piece suits and had a smile that could freeze water. He was also the man who had fractured her wrist 3 days ago because she burned the roast. "Destination?" the agent at the counter asked, her voice bored, cutting through the noise of the terminal. Emma blinked, the fluorescent light stinging her eyes. She hadn't slept in 24 hours. "Anywhere," she whispered, then caught herself. "I mean, the next flight, international, far away. Please." The agent raised an eyebrow, typing on her keyboard. "I have a seat on a flight to Rome, Italy. Boarding in 40 minutes. It's first class only, though. Last seat." "I'll take it." Emma slammed her credit card down, the one secret card she had opened 2 years ago, under her maiden name, Emma Russo, specifically for this moment. It had a limit of $10,000. The ticket cost $6. It didn't matter. 20 minutes later, she was rushing through TSA, flinching every time a man with broad shoulders walked too close. Marcus had trackers on her car. He had cameras in the apartment. She had left her phone in a trash can on 42nd Street and bought a burner flip phone that currently sat heavy in her coat pocket. She made it to the gate just as they were calling final boarding for flight DL4445. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Alive! 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 She stumbled down the jet bridge, clutching her singular carry-on bag. It contained 2 changes of clothes, her birth certificate, and a stolen file drive she had swiped from Marcus's home office. Her insurance policy. The flight attendant smiled, directing her to seat 4A. Emma collapsed into the wide leather seat, the smell of recycled air and expensive cologne hitting her instantly. She shoved her bag under the seat, her hand still shaking. She buckled the belt tight, squeezing her eyes shut. "I did it. I'm out." "Rough day?" The voice was low, baritone, and sounded like gravel crushed in velvet. Emma snapped her eyes open. She had been so consumed by her panic, she hadn't even looked at the passenger in 4B. He was overwhelming. That was the only word. He was wearing a black suit that looked bespoke, tailored to fit broad shoulders that strained against the fabric. No tie. The top 2 buttons of his white shirt were undone, revealing tanned skin and the hint of a tattoo peeking out from his collarbone. He had dark, almost black hair, swept back, and eyes the color of espresso. Dark, intense, and currently fixed on her trembling hands. I'm fine," Emma stammered, turning toward the window. The rain lashed against the glass. "You're shaking, Tesoro," he said. The Italian endearment slipped out effortlessly. Emma stiffened. "I just hate flying." "Liar," he murmured, almost to himself. He didn't press it. He just turned back to his tablet, scrolling through what looked like complex architectural blueprints or security schematics. As the plane taxied, Emma gripped the armrests. Every vibration felt like Marcus grabbing her arm. But then, the engines roared. Thrust pressed her back into the seat, and the ground fell away. The lights of New York, the city that had become her prison, shrank into tiny, insignificant specks. The adrenaline dump was instantaneous. The moment the seatbelt sign dinged off, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. The terror of the last 3 days caught up. Her eyelids felt made of lead. She didn't mean to sleep. She just meant to close her eyes for a second. The last thing she registered was the scent of the man next to her. It wasn't just cologne. It was sandalwood, tobacco, and something sharp, metallic, like gun oil. Emma woke up to a jolt of turbulence. Disoriented, she gasped, her hands flying up, but she wasn't hitting a pillow. Her cheek was pressed against something warm and solid, very solid. She froze. She was draped over the center console, her head resting squarely on the shoulder of the man in seat 4B. And not just resting, she had a hand clutching his bicep. Slowly, mortified, she lifted her head. He was awake. He was reading a hardcover book, The Prince by Machiavelli in Italian, holding it in his left hand. His right arm, the one she had been sleeping on, was still relaxed. He turned his head slowly. Those dark eyes locked onto hers. There was no annoyance in them. Instead, there was an unreadable intensity, a simmering calculation. "Sleep well?" he asked. His voice was raspier now, thick with sleep or disuse. Emma scrambled back into her own seat, her face burning. "I am so sorry. I must have passed out. You should have pushed me off." "I didn't mind," he said simply. He closed the book. "You stopped shaking." Emma smoothed her hair, feeling exposed. "I'm Emma," she said, realizing she had been rude. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, a pause that felt weighted. "Dante. Dante Valenti." Valenti. The name sounded heavy, old. "Business or pleasure in Rome, Dante?" she asked, trying to normalize the situation. "Family business," he said, his lip curling slightly, as if the words tasted bitter. "And you? Running away or running toward something?" Emma went cold. "Why would you think I'm running away?" Dante gestured vaguely to her appearance. "You have no luggage tags on your bag. You're wearing a coat that's too thin for New York winter, but you haven't taken it off for 9 hours, and you check your watch every 3 minutes. He leaned in closer, dropping his voice. "And you have a bruise on your left wrist that you keep trying to pull your sleeve over." Emma yanked her sleeve down, her heart plummeting. "That's none of your business." "No," Dante agreed, leaning back. "It isn't. Yet." The pilot announced their descent. The tension in the cabin shifted. For the rest of the landing, Dante didn't speak, but Emma could feel his awareness of her. It was like sitting next to a tiger that had decided, for the moment, not to bite. When the plane landed at Leonardo da Vinci Fiumicino Airport, the rush to deplane was chaotic. Emma grabbed her bag, desperate to put distance between herself and this perceptive, dangerous man. "Safe travels, Emma," Dante said as she squeezed past him. "Goodbye, Dante," she murmured, not looking back. She moved through customs quickly, the automated gates letting her through. She breathed a sigh of relief as she stepped into the arrivals hall, surrounded by the noise of Italian greetings and taxi hustlers. She found a quiet corner near a currency exchange and pulled out her burner phone to check the time. No signal. That was odd. She went to the currency exchange booth. She handed over her credit card, the same one she used for the flight, and asked for 500 euros. The teller swiped it, frowned, swiped it again. Signora, the card is declined. That's impossible, Emma said, her stomach dropping. I have thousands on that limit. Try it again. It says stolen, lost, hold card. The teller looked at her suspiciously. I cannot give it back. No. Emma reached for it, but the teller pulled it behind the glass. That's my only money. Next, the teller shouted. Emma stumbled back, panic rising in her throat like bile. Marcus. Of course. He had connections in banking. He must have flagged her social security number. He had found her. Even across the ocean, he had found her. She had $40 in cash, no credit card, no hotel booked, and she was in a foreign country. She turned around, her vision blurring with tears of frustration. She needed to get to the US Embassy, or maybe just curl up in a ball and die. Two men in dark leather jackets were standing near the exit, scanning the crowd. They weren't looking at the tourists. They were looking at faces. One of them held up a phone, looked at the screen, and then looked directly at Emma. She recognized the look. It was the same look Marcus's security detail had. Hired muscle. She spun around, walking fast toward the taxi rank, her breath coming in short gasps. The men started moving. She walked faster. They sped up. She burst out of the sliding doors into the Roman sunlight, looking frantically for a taxi. The line was 50 people deep. The two men were 20 feet behind her. 15. Suddenly, a sleek, black Maserati Quattroporte screeched to a halt right in front of her, cutting off a taxi. The back window rolled down. Dante Valenti sat there, sunglasses on. He didn't look at her. He looked at the two men approaching behind her. The men stopped dead in their tracks when they saw the car. They saw the license plate. They saw him. Dante turned his head to Emma. He pushed the door open. Get in. I told you, Emma said, her voice shaking. I don't get in cars with strangers. Look behind you, Emma, Dante said calmly. She looked. The two men were on their phones now, watching her, waiting for her to be alone. They work for him, don't they? Dante asked. Whoever gave you that bruise? Emma looked back at the open door. The leather interior looked like a sanctuary. I have no money, she whispered. My cards are frozen. I didn't ask for money, Dante said. I'm offering you a choice. You can stay on the curb with them, or you can get in the car with the devil you know. A horn honked behind them. Emma made her choice. She threw her bag in and dove into the back seat of the Maserati. Dante hit the button to lock the doors before she was even fully seated. Go, he said to the driver. As the car peeled away, merging into the aggressive Roman traffic, Emma looked out the back window. The two men were watching them go, but they didn't follow. They looked afraid. She turned to Dante. He had taken his sunglasses off. Who are you? She whispered. Really? Dante lit a cigarette, despite the pristine interior of the car. He inhaled deeply, the smoke curling around them. In New York, I'm an investor, he said, blowing the smoke toward the ceiling. But here, in Rome, I'm the reason men like those two don't sleep at night. He turned to her, his gaze heavy. And now you're with me, which means your problems just became my problems. The drive into the heart of Rome was a blur of ancient stone and modern chaos, but inside the Maserati, the silence was absolute. Emma sat as far away from Dante as the seat allowed, clutching her bag to her chest like a shield. Where are we going? She asked finally, her voice small. Safe house, Dante replied, scrolling on his phone. He didn't look up. If your ex can freeze your assets within 10 hours of you leaving the country, he has reach. Staying at a hotel is suicide. You check in. Your passport pings the system. He finds you. I can't stay with you. I don't know you. Dante chuckled. a dark, humorless sound. "You slept on me for 6 hours, Emma. You know I don't snore. That's more than most couples know about each other." The car turned off the main road, winding up a steep hill lined with cypress trees. They approached a massive wrought-iron gate. 2 armed guards, visibly armed with submachine guns slung over their chests, stepped out. They saw the car, nodded respectfully, and the gate swung open. Emma's eyes widened. "This isn't a house, it's a fortress." "The Valenti estate," Dante corrected. "My father built it to keep the world out. I use it to keep my enemies in. Hopefully for you, it serves the former purpose today." The villa was breathtaking. Terracotta roof, walls the color of sunset, overlooking the entire sprawl of Rome. But Emma noticed the cameras on every corner, the high walls, the electrified wire hidden within the ivy. The car stopped. The driver, a silent giant named Luca, opened Emma's door. "Come," Dante said. He led her through the massive oak double doors into a foyer that cost more than her entire life's earnings. Marble floors, Renaissance-era paintings, a chandelier that looked like frozen tears. "Luca will take your bag to the guest wing. You need to eat. You look like you're going to faint," Dante commanded. He didn't ask. He ordered. It was a tone she was used to, but unlike Marcus, whose orders were about control, Dante's felt like protection. He led her to a kitchen that smelled of garlic and roasting rosemary. An older woman was stirring a pot. "Nonna," Dante said, his voice softening instantly. The woman turned. She was short, round, and had eyes as sharp as Dante's. She looked at Emma, then at Dante. "Who is this stray, Dante?" "A guest, Nonna. She needs food, and wine. A lot of wine." Over a plate of the best pasta carbonara Emma had ever tasted, the adrenaline finally crashed. She put the fork down, her hand trembling again. "He's going to kill me," she whispered. The reality of it hit her. "Marcus, he's connected. You don't understand." Dante poured her a glass of deep red Chianti. He sat across from her, elbows on the table, watching her. "Tell me about Marcus." "Marcus Sterling," Emma said. "He runs private equity, but it's a front. He washes money for people. Bad people." Dante's eyes narrowed slightly. "Sterling, I know the name. He moves money through the Cayman Islands for the Russian Bratva." Emma froze. "How do you know that?" Dante took a sip of his wine. "Because I'm the one who usually stops him, or takes a cut." He leaned forward. "Emma, you didn't just run away from an abusive boyfriend. You ran away from the bagman for the Russian mob. And if you're here, and he's chasing you this hard, it means you took something." Emma's hand instinctively went to her bag on the floor. Dante saw the movement. "The drive," he said softly. "The one in your bag." "It has his ledgers," she confessed, tears spilling over. "I just wanted leverage. I just wanted him to let me go. I didn't know it would start a war." Dante sat back, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smile of a general who just found a nuclear weapon. "You have the Sterling ledgers?" Dante laughed, a low rumble. "Emma, you didn't wake up with a Mafia boss. You just woke up with the only man in Italy who wants those ledgers more than Marcus does." He stood up and walked over to her. He placed a hand on the back of her chair, leaning down so his lips were inches from her ear. "You're not a guest anymore, Emma," he whispered, sending shivers down her spine. "Now you're my partner, and nobody touches my partners." The Valenti villa became Emma's golden cage. She was safe, yes, but intensely aware that her security was entirely contingent on Dante's presence, and more importantly, on the small encrypted flash drive hidden inside a false bottom of her cheap carry-on. The day after her arrival, Dante summoned her to his private office. It was less an office and more a war room. Dark wood, maps of Italy and the Mediterranean covered in cryptic markings, and 3 large monitors displaying complex financial matrices. "The drive," Dante stated, holding out his hand. He hadn't asked her how she felt, or if she slept well. He got straight to business. Emma hesitated, clutching her hands in front of her. "I need your word, Dante. Once you have what you need, Marcus can't find me. You have to guarantee my freedom." Dante leaned back in his leather chair, a portrait of lethal calm. "Freedom is expensive, Emma. Protection from Marcus Sterling and the Bratva means vanishing. New papers, new identity, a lifetime of looking over your shoulder. You want me to buy you that life." "I want to live," she corrected, her voice firm. He steepled his fingers, staring at her. The ledgers expose Sterling's shell companies and his Russian associates. They are worth a fortune in leverage to me. But I'm not running a charity. You give me the drive now, I secure the information. I use it to permanently dismantle Sterling's operation in Europe, eliminating your threat. And if he still comes after me? Dante's eyes hardened. If Sterling shows his face in Rome, he becomes my problem, permanently. You won't have to worry about him again. I swear it on the Valenti name. The name carried weight. It was a centuries-old promise of power and violence. She knew she had no choice. She took the drive from her bag and placed it on the massive mahogany desk. Dante picked it up, his thumb tracing the metallic shell. "Good girl." He plugged it into a dedicated, air-gapped terminal. For the next 4 hours they sat in silence while the drive decrypted. Emma watched the complex lines of code scroll across the screen, the evidence of 2 years of meticulous, hidden record-keeping, confirming Marcus's financial crimes. "You really worked for him?" Dante asked, not looking up. "He controlled my life," she admitted, staring at the screen. "He isolated me. But I saw the accounts, I saw the transfers. I started copying things down months ago, just scraps, until I realized how deep it went. I didn't want the money, Dante. I wanted the truth to destroy him." "Vengeance is a powerful motivator," he murmured, "and dangerous." The decryption finished. Dante leaned back, his expression unreadable. He had the weapon he needed. Just then, his secure line rang. It was Luca. Dante answered on speakerphone. "What is it?" "Boss, we got a hit. Sterling's private jet landed in Ciampino an hour ago. He didn't check into a hotel. His tracking shows he's currently meeting with Pietro the Butcher Marino in Ostia." Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Pietro Marino was the Valenti family's oldest rival, an opportunistic capo who ran the docks and controlled the drug trade in the south. Dante slammed his fist on the desk. "He came to Rome. He's negotiating with Marino to trade the ledgers for her. Sterling is trying to buy protection on my territory." Dante looked at Emma, his anger palpable, but not directed at her. "He thinks he can play a petty corporate game here. He thinks he can walk into Rome and cut a deal to buy his safety and sell yours. He just signed his own death warrant." He stood up and began barking orders into the phone, Italian, fast and vicious. Emma understood only the tone. War. Later that evening, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Dante was gone, dealing with the threat. Emma was confined to the guest wing, pacing the luxurious Persian carpets. She was staring out the window at the distant, glittering lights of the city when the door opened. It wasn't Luca. It was Dante. He was wearing fresh clothes, but his jaw was tight, his shirt slightly rumpled. He smelled of rain and gunpowder. Did you see him?" Emma whispered. "No," Dante said, pouring himself a glass of whiskey from the crystal decanter on her dresser. He downed it in one swallow. Marino backed down. We reminded him where his boundaries were. Sterling ran like the coward he is, straight to the airport. But he left a message. Dante walked closer, stopping inches away. He knows you gave me the ledgers, Emma. He knows your name is on my books now, and he wants to meet me, publicly. He wants to leverage the exposure of his crimes against your life. What did you say? I said yes. Dante stared into her eyes, his intensity drawing the breath right out of her lungs. 2 days. The Cafe di Notte near the Colosseum. He thinks he can hide in the crowd. He's wrong. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair off her forehead, his touch unexpectedly soft. You were right to be afraid of him. But now, you need to be afraid of what I'm going to do to save you. His hand dropped to her jaw, tilting her face up. The air was charged with danger, adrenaline, and something primal. I need you to trust me, he said, his voice a low command. I have no one else, she confessed, the vulnerability breaking her. Good, he breathed, because in 2 days, I am going to walk into that cafe, and I am going to reclaim what he stole from you, and from me. He kissed her then. It wasn't tender. It was a hungry, desperate claim, tasting of whiskey and the metallic tang of battle. It was a kiss that promised protection, but demanded ownership, burning away the fear and replacing it with a terrifying, exhilarating fire. It was the moment their dangerous alliance cemented into something deeper, something that belonged to the shadows of Rome. The next 2 days were spent in a state of suspended animation. Emma remained confined, but the tension with Dante was electric. They spoke less about the ledgers and more about their pasts, little fragments shared over late-night wine, illuminating the scars they both carried. Emma confessed the suffocating loneliness of her life with Marcus. Dante revealed the cold, calculated burden of leading the Valenti family after his elder brother's death, sacrificing his own dreams for the familiar. The morning of the meeting, Dante was dressed in a dark, impeccable suit. He looked like an executive, a diplomat, a predator. You're not going with me, he said, adjusting his cufflink. I have to, Emma insisted, standing in the doorway of his office. Sterling won't negotiate unless he sees me. He needs to know I'm alive, so he can threaten to take me away. He'll want the satisfaction of my fear. Dante looked at her, his expression grim. You'll be bait, but smart bait. Luca will be with you. You don't take your eyes off him. You follow every instruction. If I say run, you run. If I go, I want the chance to tell him what I think of him, Emma said, her chin up. A slow smile, one of respect, spread across Dante's face. The little stray has teeth. Very well. You get 2 minutes. Then you are silent. The Cafe di Notte was a beautiful, historic establishment tucked away near the Colosseum. It was deliberately public, filled with tourists and locals, too crowded for a clean execution, which was exactly Sterling's angle. He wanted witnesses. Dante and Emma arrived first. Emma was in a simple black dress, Dante's presence her only armor. Luca and 2 other Valenti men, Salvatore and Marco, blended seamlessly into the crowd, appearing to be business tourists. Marcus Sterling arrived 10 minutes late, flanked by 2 hulking men in cheap suits, clearly hired guns, not his usual sophisticated security detail. He looked tired, panicked, and furious. When he saw Emma, his mask of composure cracked. Emma, you chose this? Marcus's voice was tight, betraying the thousands he was losing. Every hour Dante kept the ledgers. I chose to leave, Marcus, Emma said, her voice surprisingly steady, fueled by 2 years of suppressed rage. I chose to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by your lies. Marcus sneered. Don't be a fool. You're sitting with a monster. Dante Valenti uses people and tosses them out. You think he loves you? You're a bargaining chip. Sit down, Sterling, Dante commanded, his voice low, cutting through the pleasant cafe chatter. The girl speaks the truth. She is mine now, and she is off limits. We're here to talk about you. Marcus sat down stiffly. I want the drive, and I want the girl. You can have the $10 million I wired to my London account yesterday. Dante laughed. It was a sound that made the cutlery on the table next to them rattle. 10 million? Marcus, those ledgers detail the laundering of close to $500 million for the Russian mob. You think I'll take 10 million for the key to putting you, the Bratva's favorite accountant, out of business? I'll expose your entire operation, Marcus threatened. I'll give everything I know about the Valenti family to the press, the police, the Guardia di Finanza. Dante leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the marble table. You don't understand how this works, Marcus. If you expose me, you expose yourself. You expose the Russians, and they won't send an audit. They'll send a bomb. You're already dead the moment those ledgers hit the wrong hands. And you know what the best part is? Dante's eyes flickered to Emma, a look of profound, possessive affection crossing his face. She's not a chip. She's the catalyst. She's the one who brought me the evidence, and she's the one who will watch me use it to bury you. You whore! Marcus spat at Emma, his face twisted with impotent fury. You destroyed everything. That was Emma's moment. She stood up, leaning over the table, her eyes burning into his. I didn't destroy anything, Marcus, she said, her voice ringing with finality. I saved myself. And those ledgers? They weren't leverage. They were my escape rope. I stole them from you the way you stole 2 years of my life. Goodbye, Marcus. She turned and walked away, not looking back, toward where Luca was waiting. Dante watched her go, a flicker of pride in his eyes. He turned back to Marcus, the warmth gone, replaced by glacial indifference. She's gone, Sterling. Now, we finalize your severance package. The negotiation that followed was brutal. Dante demanded all of Sterling's European assets, all his shell corporations, and a clean severance from the Bratva, leveraging the ledgers against Marcus's life. Marcus was broken, stripped bare, left with nothing but a passport and a flight ticket out of Europe, permanently. The moment the deal was signed, on a napkin, sealed with a pen that Dante casually pocketed, Dante stood up. It's over, Sterling, Dante said, looking down at the defeated man. If you ever look at her again, I won't send Luca. I'll send the family. Understood? Marcus could only nod, his defeat absolute. Dante walked away from the table, a victor, his steps measured and confident. He found Emma and Luca waiting outside, overlooking the bustling Roman street. He reached for Emma's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Her skin was cold, but her grip was firm. It's done, mia bella, he said softly, using the Italian endearment reserved only for her. He's finished. He's on his way back to New York with nothing but shame. The relief that flooded Emma was so intense, it almost buckled her knees. She leaned into Dante, savoring the solid, protective presence of the man who had become her unintended savior. She was safe. She was free. But as she looked up at him, she knew the real twist. She had escaped one dangerous man, only to fall deeply, perilously in love with another. And this one was holding her heart, not just her hand. The peace that followed Marcus's departure was fragile, like thin ice over a deep, dark river. For 3 weeks, Emma lived in a strange paradise. She had free reign of the Valenti villa. She had a wardrobe filled with silk and cashmere, purchased by Dante. She had nights that blurred into passionate, feverish hazes, where Dante worshipped her body as if it were a shrine. But she didn't have him? Not really. Dante was pulling away. He spent long hours in his study, the door locked. The armed guards around the perimeter doubled. Luca, usually chatty, became grim and silent. Emma wasn't the same terrified girl who had boarded the plane at JFK. Surviving Marcus had forged her. Surviving the last month with Dante had sharpened her. She knew something was wrong. One rainy Tuesday, while Dante was away at a meeting that required him to wear a bulletproof vest under his shirt, Emma slipped into his study. She didn't pick the lock. She knew the code. 10:21. The date they met. A small, sentimental vulnerability in a man made of steel. She wasn't looking for evidence of infidelity. She was looking for the reason he was pushing her away. She found it on his desk. It wasn't a digital file. It was a physical dossier stamped with the Valenti crest. She opened it. Her breath hitched. Inside were photographs. Photos of her walking her dog in Central Park 3 months ago. Photos of her grocery shopping in Manhattan. Photos of her arguing with Marcus outside a restaurant. There were surveillance logs dated weeks before she bought her plane ticket. Target: Emma Russo. Subject of interest: sterling leverage. Her blood ran cold. The narrative she had built in her head, that fate had seated them together, that she had stumbled onto his shoulder by chance, shattered. Dante hadn't just been on that flight. He was following her. He knew she was going to run because his men had been watching the house. He had booked the seat next to her. He had waited for her to fall asleep to assess her. He hadn't saved a stranger. He had acquired an asset. The sound of the heavy oak door opening behind her made her jump. She spun around, the dossier clutching in her hand. Dante stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, his jacket discarded, his white shirt clinging to his chest. He looked exhausted. He saw the file in her hand, and his expression didn't change. There was no guilt, only a resigned sadness. "I was going to burn that," he said, his voice rough. "You knew," Emma whispered, her voice trembling with a new kind of pain. "Betrayal. You knew who I was before I got on the plane. You were stalking Marcus. You were stalking me." Dante walked into the room, pouring a drink. "I was hunting a man who was washing money for my enemies. You were his weak point. The initial plan was to intercept you in New York, offer you protection in exchange for the files. But you ran before my team could make contact, so I followed you onto the plane. So it was all a lie?" Tears pricked her eyes. "The rescue at the airport? The partner's speech? You were just handling me." Dante slammed his glass down, the crystal shattering. "The plan was business, Emma. The feeling, that was the variable I didn't account for." He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her arms, not painfully, but desperately. "Do you think I would risk a war with the Bratva for an asset? I could have taken that drive and left you on the curb in Rome. I could have paid you off. Instead, I brought you into my home. I put a target on my back for you." "Because I'm useful," she yelled, shoving him back. "Because I love you," he roared back, the confession tearing out of him like a physical wound. Silence descended on the room, heavy and suffocating. Dante looked shocked by his own admission. He ran a hand through his wet hair, turning away. "The Russians aren't just angry about the money, Emma," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. "They know you've seen the ledgers. They know you can identify their operators. Marcus talked before he left. He sold you out to save his own skin one last time." He turned back to her, his eyes dead serious. "I have a jet waiting at the private airfield. It leaves in 1 hour for a safe house in the Swiss Alps. You'll have a new name, a trust fund. You'll be safe. But you have to go. Tonight." You're sending me away? I am saving your life, he corrected. The Bratva is sending a kill squad. They will be here by morning. I can't fight them and protect you at the same time. Emma looked at the dossier, then at the man who had lied to her, used her, and then fallen in love with her. She saw the scar on his jaw. She saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, but fear of losing her. She realized then that the safe life she always wanted was a myth. There was no safety. There was only who you chose to stand in the fire with. She took the dossier and threw it into the fireplace. The flames licked at the photos of her past life. No, she said. Dante blinked. Emma, this isn't a negotiation. You will die. If I leave, they'll just hunt me down in Switzerland, she said, stepping closer to him. And you'll be distracted, wondering if I'm safe. You'll die here alone. She reached up, cupping his bruised face. I'm not the asset anymore, Dante. I'm the partner. You said it yourself. Nobody touches your partners. Emma, he groaned, leaning his forehead against hers. You are stubborn, foolish. I learned from the best. She kissed him, soft and firm. Give me a gun. Teach me how to use the safety. We fight them together. The attack didn't announce itself with a scream or a siren. It arrived at 3:17 a.m., cloaked in the deafening roar of a Roman thunderstorm. Emma was awake. She was lying in the massive four-poster bed, watching the lightning flash against the ceiling, counting the seconds between the light and the thunder. 1, 2, 3. Beside her, Dante was asleep, but it was a restless soldier's sleep. His arm was thrown heavy over her waist, anchoring her to the mattress, but his breathing was shallow. Even in his dreams, he was guarding her. She shifted slightly, the silk sheets rustling. The decision she had made hours ago, to stay, to fight, to refuse the flight to Switzerland, sat heavy in her stomach like a stone. She wasn't a killer. She was an accountant who liked Earl Grey tea and organizing spreadsheets. But looking at Dante's sleeping face, the scar on his jaw silver in the moonlight, she knew she couldn't leave him to face the consequences of her freedom alone. Then, the world tilted. The power to the villa cut out. The ambient hum of the air conditioning, the faint glow of the hallway nightlights, it all vanished instantly, plunging the room into an absolute, suffocating darkness. Dante moved before Emma even processed the change. He didn't wake up. He activated. In one fluid motion, he rolled off the bed, his hand already reaching under the mattress. "Stay down," he hissed, his voice devoid of sleep, sharp as a razor. "The storm," Emma whispered, clutching the duvet. "No, the generator didn't kick in. The lines were cut." From the floor below, a sound drifted up through the floorboards. It wasn't the thunder. It was a rhythmic, wet, coughing sound. Thwip, thwip, thwip. Emma knew that sound from movies, but hearing it in real life was a visceral horror. It was the sound of suppressed gunfire. It was the sound of the perimeter guards dying. Dante was already fully dressed in the dark, pulling on tactical pants and a black shirt he had left on the chair. He moved to the hidden safe behind the painting of the Roman Forum, punching in the code by touch alone. The heavy click of the lock opening was the loudest thing in the room. He turned back to her, a shadow among shadows. He pressed cold, heavy steel into her hands. The Sig Sauer P226. "Bathroom," he ordered, dragging her out of bed. "Lock the heavy marble door. Get in the tub. Do not come out unless you hear my voice or Luca's voice. Do you understand?" "Dante, there's too many of them." He grabbed her face, his thumbs digging into her cheekbones. "I need to know you are safe so I can do what I need to do. If you are out here, you are a liability. If you are in there, you are my reason to live. Go!" He shoved her toward the ensuite. Emma stumbled back, her bare feet slipping on the cold floor. She saw him turn toward the bedroom door, racking the slide of his own weapon, a larger assault rifle he had pulled from the safe. He looked like a demon of vengeance, silhouetted against a lightning strike. She slammed the bathroom door and turned the heavy brass lock. She was alone. Emma scrambled into the massive porcelain bathtub, curling into a ball. She gripped the gun with both hands, her finger trembling near the trigger guard, just like he had taught her. Safety off. Slide back. Aim. Squeeze. It felt alien and heavy, a tool of death in hands that had only ever held pens. Outside the door, hell broke loose. The suppressed thwip sounds were replaced by the roar of unsuppressed automatic fire. The Russians were inside. The sound was deafening, vibrating through the marble walls. She heard shouting, guttural, angry Russian commands echoing up the stairwell. Then, the booming retort of a shotgun, Luca's signature weapon. Boom! Clack, clack. Boom! She squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out. Every gunshot felt like it was piercing her own skin. Was that Dante? Was he hit? Was he killing them? Minutes stretched into hours. The smell of cordite and burning wood began to seep under the bathroom door, overpowering the scent of lavender soap. Bang! A body slammed against the bathroom door with enough force to crack the wood near the hinges. Emma stifled a scream, biting her knuckles. "Valenti!" A voice roared from the hallway. It was thick, heavy with a Russian accent, and breathless with exertion. "We have the house. Give us the girl and the drive. We will make it quick." "Come and get it, you filth!" Dante's voice roared back, followed by a burst of gunfire that sounded terrifyingly close. He was right outside the door. He was making his last stand at the threshold of her sanctuary. Emma realized with a jolt of icy clarity, he is losing. She could hear the volume of fire. There were at least 3 or 4 rifles firing against Dante's single position. They were suppressing him, pinning him down. He couldn't move. Eventually they would flank him. They would toss a grenade. They would kill him. And then they would break down this door and drag her back to Marcus, or worse. The old Emma, the one who flinched when Marcus raised his voice, the one who cooked roasts to perfection to avoid a beating, would have stayed in the tub. She would have prayed and waited for the end. But that Emma had died the moment she stole the ledgers. She looked up. The bathroom had a high, vaulted ceiling. In the corner there was a small maintenance hatch used for accessing the plumbing and the central AC unit. She remembered Dante mentioning the villa's layout. The AC ducts ran above the hallway to circulate air in the old stone house. She didn't think. She moved. She stood on the edge of the tub, her wet feet gripping the porcelain. She reached up, her fingers barely grazing the handle of the hatch. She jumped, grabbing the ledge, and hauled herself up. Her arms screamed in protest. She wasn't an athlete, but adrenaline provided a strength she didn't know she possessed. She shimmied into the crawl space. It was dark, dusty, and suffocatingly tight. Fiberglass insulation scratched at her bare arms. Spiders scuttled away from her hands. She crawled on her elbows, the gun skittering across the plywood planks in front of her. She crawled toward the noise, toward the gunfire. She reached a ventilation grate that looked down into the hallway. Light from the muzzle flashes below strobed through the slats, illuminating the scene like a horrific disco. She peered down. The hallway was a wreck. Expensive vases were shattered shards on the carpet. The walls were pockmarked with bullet holes. Dante was crouched behind an overturned antique dresser at the far end of the hall, near the bedroom door. He was reloading, his movements frantic. Blood was soaking through the left shoulder of his shirt. Facing him, halfway down the hall, were 3 men clad in black tactical gear and balaclavas. They were moving tactically, leapfrogging forward. One would fire to keep Dante's head down while the other two advanced. They were 20 feet from him, then 15. The leader of the trio stopped directly under the vaulted center of the hallway. He reached to his vest and pulled out a spherical object. A grenade. He pulled the pin. Emma's heart stopped. He wasn't going to shoot Dante. He was going to roll the grenade behind the dresser and turn him into pink mist. She had the Sig Sauer in her hand. She tried to line up the sights on the man's head through the metal grate of the vent. Her hands were shaking too hard. She couldn't get a clean shot. If she missed, he would throw the grenade. Dante would die. Think, Emma. Think. Her eyes shifted. Directly above the three Russians hung the pride of the Valenti estate, a massive 19th century crystal chandelier. It weighed over 400 pounds, suspended by a single thick iron chain and a gold-plated fixture. The man wound his arm back to throw. Emma shifted her aim. She didn't aim at the moving man. She aimed at the stationary anchor point of the chandelier, where the chain met the ceiling plaster, just 3 feet away from her face. She took a breath. The smell of dust filled her nose. I am not a victim. She squeezed the trigger. The gun kicked violently in the confined space, the sound deafening her instantly. The bullet struck the tension point of the chain. Sparks flew. The metal groaned, a screeching, tearing sound that cut through the gunfire, and then snapped. Gravity took over. The massive fixture plummeted. It was a waterfall of crystal and iron. The Russian with the grenade looked up, his eyes widening behind his mask, but it was too late. Crash! The impact shook the entire second floor. The sound was like a bomb going off, a cacophony of shattering glass and crushing bone. Dust billowed up through the vent, blinding Emma. Silence followed. Absolute, ringing silence. Emma coughed, waving the dust away. She kicked the grate hard, the screws popping out of the old wood, and the metal clang falling to the floor below. Emma! Dante's voice was ragged, broken. She peered over the edge. The 3 men were gone. In their place was a mountain of broken crystal, twisted brass, and motionless black limbs. The grenade had rolled harmlessly away into a corner, unexploded, the pin still in the dead man's hand under the debris. Dante was standing up slowly from behind the dresser. He was covered in drywall dust, his face streaked with blood and sweat. He was staring at the pile of rubble. Then slowly, he looked up at the hole in the ceiling. Emma looked down at him, her face smudged with soot, the smoking gun still in her hand. I missed the guy, she croaked, her voice trembling. I was aiming for his head. Dante stared at her for a heartbeat. Then he started to laugh. It was a hysterical, breathless sound, bordering on madness. He stumbled over the debris, glass crunching under his boots, and reached up toward her. Jump, he commanded. I've got you. Emma didn't hesitate. She slid out of the hole and dropped. Dante caught her, his good arm wrapping around her waist, absorbing the impact. He groaned in pain as his bad shoulder jarred, but he didn't let go. He buried his face in her neck, breathing her in, shaking. You dropped the chandelier, he whispered into her hair, sounding awestruck. My nonna loved that chandelier. She would be so incredibly proud of you. I broke your house, Emma sobbed, the shock finally breaking her composure. You saved my life, he said fiercely, pulling back to look her in the eyes. You saved us. Boss! Luca limped up the stairs, his shotgun smoking. He had a tourniquet on his left thigh, his pants soaked in blood, but he was grinning like a maniac. Clear downstairs, Luca shouted. 2 runners. They fled when the ceiling came down. The Carabinieri are 5 minutes out. We have to move, boss. Now. Dante nodded, the soldier returning. The boat is at the Civitavecchia dock. We go to Sicily. The Valentis have strongholds in Palermo that the Russians can't touch. We disappear tonight." He grabbed Emma's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. His grip was iron-tight, possessive, desperate. They ran. They ran down the grand staircase, stepping over the bodies of the men who had come to kill them. They ran out into the storm, the rain instantly soaking them to the bone, washing away the dust of the battle. Dante's black SUV was waiting, engine idling. Luca had remote-started it. They piled in, Luca behind the wheel, tires screeching as they peeled out of the gravel driveway. As the car sped down the winding, cypress-lined road, Emma turned in the back seat to look through the rear window. Smoke was rising from the upper floor of the villa. The only home she had known for the last month, the place where she had found peace, was ruined. She had lost her clothes, her passport, her old identity. She had no money, no phone, no plan. She looked at Dante. He was leaning his head back against the seat, eyes closed, his hand pressing a cloth to his bleeding shoulder. He looked broken, tired, and dangerous. He opened his eyes and caught her staring. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. He reached across the seat and took her hand again, bringing her knuckles to his lips. He kissed the bruise where the gun had kicked back against her thumb. "No turning back now, tesoro," he murmured. "You're in the life." Emma squeezed his hand back. She felt the cold steel of the gun still tucked into her waistband. She felt the adrenaline fading, replaced by a fierce, burning resolve. "Drive," she said to Luca. She wasn't running away anymore. She was running toward something. She had entered the fire a victim, but she was leaving it a queen, and God help anyone who tried to touch her king again. 6 months later. The terrace overlooking the Amalfi coast was bathed in golden sunlight. Emma sat at the iron table, signing the final documents for the new winery she had just purchased. The name on the deed read Emma Valenti. She wasn't hiding anymore. The war with the Russians had been bloody, but short. With the ledgers exposed to the international authorities anonymously, the Bratva cell was dismantled. Marcus Sterling was currently serving 25 years in a federal prison in Illinois. Emma put the pen down and looked at the man standing at the edge of the terrace, looking out at the Tyrrhenian Sea. Dante turned. The scar on his jaw was still there, but the darkness in his eyes had lifted. He walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Done?" he asked. "Done," she smiled. "We own the vineyard." "You own the vineyard," he corrected. "I just provide the security." Emma laughed, leaning back into his touch. She thought about the girl she used to be, scared, small, defined by the men who hurt her. That girl was gone. She had walked through the fire, dropped a chandelier on her demons, and come out the other side. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the queen of a kingdom, built on blood and love, and she wouldn't trade her crown for anything. "Ready for dinner?" Dante asked, extending his hand. Emma took it. "Always." She escaped her toxic ex, took the first flight, and woke up with a hot Mafia boss. It sounds like a fairy tale, but in real life, fairy tales have teeth. And luckily for Emma, she learned how to bite back. And that is how Emma went from a victim to a victor. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest path is the one that leads to freedom. It makes you wonder. If you were on that plane, and you saw the danger in Dante's eyes, would you have run away? Or would you have stayed to see how the story ends? If you enjoyed this story of twists, romance, and revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Share this video with a friend who needs a little reminder that they are stronger than they think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.